There are a number of experiences that have been shared of people having more in-depth experiences with Sasquatch. This is one of those, and it is not your typical kind of Sasquatch experience shared. It included a much more in-depth interaction between the experiencer and the Sasquatch. Sasquatch stories that are shared are not always easy to believe for a lot of people out there. And a story like this may be hard to believe, even for those who believe in Sasquatch. If you are a skeptic or just can't believe a story like this, where direct communication transpired and a friendship was formed, that is understandable. There is no need to express your disbelief in a comment, since we already know, as you are likely in the vast majority. That being said, if you are interested in hearing about a more in-depth experience for entertainment, or perhaps to add some pieces to your own puzzle, then I hope you enjoy listening. I will add that there are a number of consistencies I noted with other experiences that have been shared that are somewhat similar. I've heard enough to believe that William is telling the truth, and if you really think about that, then I don't think anyone could argue that this is an incredible, mind-blowing experience. Okay. Now I will read a few posts William made about these experiences, along with a few questions which William took the time to answer and respond to. A number of skeptics predictably shared their skepticism in the usual rude fashion, and I want to take one more moment to say thank you, William, for sharing this with those of us who are interested in hearing experiences such as this. Here are William's posts and a few comments, questions, along with William's responses. Thank you, William, for allowing me to create a video out of your shares. I am incredibly amazed and fascinated by it, and I learned from it as well. First post from William. I'm home and have so much to share with everyone. It was hard for me to leave. We'll be going back very soon because this was an awesome 3 days being out there in the woods. For anyone who believes squatches are demonic and demons, you don't have a freaking clue about them. They are very intelligent and have personalities also. And they like to have fun, and are a kind, ancient race of people who choose to live a simple lifestyle. Everyone needs to make friends with a forest friend. Kinda feel guilty about being blessed with my now special friend, Kawa, and now her family. I decided to go alone and had to tell a few white lies to my family in order to get it done. Told them I was going to hang out with my friend and we were going fishing on a lake, which is not far from where I was actually at alone. My friend took me up to our area and helped me get camp set up and unload my supplies for 3 days. I decided to take some different fruits and veggies to see if Kawa and family liked them. And guess what? I think I corrupted her 2 young ones with a bag of marshmallows. On my way up, I sent a message by MindSpeak to let Kawa know I was going to be there soon. She said it would be late that night before she would get there, which was all right with me. What I didn't know was she had a surprise for me. About an hour after my friend had left to go fishing, I was sitting in front of the tent and relaxing, and thought I heard movement behind me in the woods. So I got up to look around to make sure a bear or bobcat was not trying to sneak up on me. Had a pistol on my hip in a holster and my hatchet in hand ready to use. If something comes charging because I can't run, it's either fight or die for me. While standing there looking around, I caught movement to my left side about 100 yards away. At first, I thought it was squirrels playing on a tree because I just saw a quick flicker of something next to a big tree. Was about to wrap it up to my mind playing tricks on my nerves when I saw a bigger shadow move in the spot. I knew it was not a squirrel. It looks like a head leaning out to peek around the tree. It was dark looking. I then thought it was a person because it was about 6 feet tall. About that time, I heard a voice in my head. It was Kawa, telling me she sent her daughter to keep a watch out for me. I felt the tension leave my body and I relaxed some. Then I said out loud, "Hello, my friend. I'm a friend of your parent Kawa." Then I went back and sat down again. Then about 30 minutes later, I hear footsteps coming my way. I look up, and about 40 yards away stood a juvenile female Sasquatch, looking at me, and I said, "You can come closer," and offered her an apple. So I rolled it across the ground about 20 feet from her, and she walked over and picked it up and went back to where I first saw her standing, and she sat down and ate the apple. We sat there looking at each other for a few hours before she stood up and started looking towards the woods. Then I saw what she was looking at. It was Kawa, and when they got close, they started talking in a language I had heard in the woods before. Then Kawa and her walk over to me, and Kawa starts talking to me in English, and I saw the girl's expression change and smile. We sat down and started talking, and the girl was sitting next to her mom and watching me, and that's how Friday started. We'll share more tomorrow with my family and friends. A question in the comments. How did you even become friends from the start? How did you meet? I'm interested in your story. William's response. Myself and my friend went back to a place up in the mountains last November for a few days of fishing and camping out near a lake, here on the Carolina state lines. While they fished in the spillway, I decided to go walk around the woods looking for signs of squatches because it's been 20 years since last time we were there. As I was walking around, I kept feeling like I was being watched by someone or something from the woods. And every now and then I would smell honeysuckle flowers, but they were not in bloom that time of year. Then, later that night while sitting alone by the fire, I heard a soft female voice in my head say, "Hello, my friend." I thought I was having a weird dream but realized I was awake. And then she said, "I checked you out while you were walking around today, and I looked inside your heart and soul and saw you are open to our existence." That blew my mind to be hearing this again, because I had heard something similar back in 1982 down in the low country of South Carolina while deer hunting one morning. While sitting in a tree stand and watching what I thought was a stump in the dark slowly stand up into a hairy being over 8 feet tall, staring at me, 15 yards away with big green eyes, and felt like he was looking deep inside my soul at the time. Then I heard him say my name, Billy, and he had been waiting for me. Then he really blew my mind when he said he was my spiritual guide, Shasta. Then here, 40 years later, it's happening again, but this is a female voice in my head. Then she said her name was Kawa, and I said my name in my head. Then we started to mind speak with each other, and it's grown from that night. Then, a few months ago, I went back up there and finally got to see her in person and touch her one night. So I went back this weekend to spend time alone and hopefully meet her family members and her again. Okay, my friend. Another question. What a wonderful story. It sounds like they read your mind. Is there a limit on physical distance with this trait? William's response. She read more than my mind a year ago. Right before I heard her voice in my head say, "Hello, my friend." They can mind speak and read you like an open book, and that's how I was able to become her friend. And now have met her family members and working on earning their trust also. They are a very intelligent race of people who have been around much longer than us humans. Okay, my friend. Another comment. That's awesome. I hope to one day sit with them and chat. They visit me often and always let me know when they're around. Pretty effing cool, eh? That we are friends with them. I still can't believe it sometimes. William's response. My ability to hear them started back in 1982 when I was on a deer hunting trip with my father. He had joined a private hunting club down in the lower part of the state, where deer hunting season started as early as August 1st, unlike in the upstate area where we lived that didn't start until October 1st. He'd been hunting down there for 2 years, and I had never been down there until this trip, but had no idea about where to hunt. The next morning, we were sitting around talking with some of the local guys who my dad had made friends with. One of them asked me, did I have a place to go? And told him this was my first time down here, and then he starts telling me about an area that hadn't been hunted in 5 years. That got my attention really fast because I was thinking deer in the area would be less cautious than other areas. So he wrote down directions for me to get there. Got there around 4:30 in the dark morning to find a place to hang a climbing tree stand and wait for daylight and hopefully see a big buck. As I was looking around with a flashlight, I saw what I thought was a stump about 15 yards away from the tree I decided to climb. I climbed up about 12 feet and settled in to wait for sunrise. But when sunrise comes, I get a shocking surprise when the stump started to stand up into an over 8-foot tall creature staring at me with big green eyes. Felt like he was looking deep inside my soul at the time. Then really got a shock when the back of my head right below my right ear started to tingle and I heard a deep voice say, "Hello, Billy. I've been waiting for you, my friend." I almost passed out but didn't. And then the voice said, "My name is Shasta, and I'm your spiritual guide." Then he started telling me about my near future and decisions in life. I thought I was having a weird dream, but realized I was awake and it was happening for real. Then he says, "Sorry for what I'm about to do." And I passed out and didn't wake up until around 9:30, and he was gone. I ignored it for a time until about a year ago. When I was in the mountains with a friend, we went back to a place we had not been to in 20 years to fish. But while he fished at a spillway, I decided to go walk around the woods and look for signs of squatches, and found plenty of evidence of activity. While walking around, I kept feeling like I was being watched by someone or something, and didn't think about it anymore until later that night while sitting alone by the fire, when the tingling happened again. Then I heard a soft female-sounding voice say, "Hello, my friend, and I have been watching you today and looked deep inside your heart and soul." She said, "I see you have talked to one of us before, and I decided to reach out to you." We mind spoke for about 30 minutes, and I didn't realize I was talking out loud also, because I woke my friend up, and they came out and asked, "Who are you talking to?" And then she went quiet. So I told him I was talking to myself, because I didn't know how to explain it to him, because I was still trying to figure out what just happened. And he bought my story and went back to sleep. I didn't hear anything from her for the rest of the night, and thought no more about it until right before we got ready to leave. I heard her voice again, and we started talking every week through Mindspeak. Then I went to camp out again back in May with my nephew. I talked to her many times, and then one night I was fixing to lay down in my tent when I heard her say, "Come outside, Billy." I almost jumped out of my tent trying to get outside, and when I got out, I saw a big dark shadow on the other side of the fire, and almost passed out when I realized it was her standing there in person. She was reading my mind and could tell I was excited and wanted to touch her to make sure I was not dreaming. Then she said, "Come over here, my friend." And I walked over, and she said, "You can touch me." And I hugged her, and she felt so soft and warm. We sat and talked for about an hour before she left for the night. The next day, I would tell my nephew that I was going to go for a walk in the woods, and would go meet her and talk about things, and learned they are curious about us humans. I feel blessed to have them as friends. The next post from William. Here is what happened that Friday night after Kawa and her daughter was sitting with me at camp. They are curious about us humans, and I was asked a lot of questions, and I explained things the best I could to them. When I got done, Kawa said she didn't understand why we chose to live that life. I told her if I was able, I would be living in the woods, like their simple lifestyle. It was finally getting to be nighttime, and I started a fire, and they were amazed at how I did it with a cigarette lighter. And we were sitting there talking when I heard owl hoots from the woods and noticed them getting up and looking toward the sounds. Then she did a call back, and then I heard movement in the woods, and it sounded like something big was coming towards camp. Then out steps to me what looked like a brick shithouse wall. I looked over at Kawa, and she is laughing, and I'm confused about what is so funny. Then she said, "I was reading your mind and heard what you said about my mate." He walks over to where we are standing, and I noticed a small one right beside him. And she said, "This is my son and his daddy," in English to me. Then she tells me their son's name is T, and she said that one you called brick shithouse wall is Dogo. Then I heard the big guy say something to her in a different language, and then they all started to laugh and look at me. I was trying to figure out what was so funny, and then she said she told him what you said in your head when you saw him. Then she said he liked the name that I called him and wanted everyone to call him Brick Shithouse Wall all the time. Then he walks over to me and puts big hands on my shoulders and smiles at me. Then he says in a deep voice, "Hello, Billy. I've heard a lot about you from Kawa." Then we sat down and I gave them all apples to eat. And then we talked about how Kawa and myself met. By this time it was around 1 o'clock in the morning and I was getting tired and told them I was going to sleep. They stretched out on the ground around the fire and went to sleep also. We'll tell you about Saturday and Sunday soon, my friends. The next post from William. Here's what happened Saturday morning and the rest of the day. I woke up around 8 in the morning and went outside to hopefully see my friends. But they were gone and I had no idea if I would see them again. I was hungry and decided to fix some scrambled eggs, so I got them out of the cooler and made some. While the eggs were cooking, I set up my coffee maker, and when the eggs were done, I sat down and ate them. By that time, the coffee was done, but I wanted to clean up my mess and get rid of the eggshells to keep from attracting bears or something else. So I walked over to the edge of the woods and threw them out there to keep things out of camp. Then went back and fixed coffee and sat down to enjoy it. And then I heard movement behind me coming towards the camp. So I got up to make sure it wasn't a bear trying to sneak up on me. I had a .22 pistol ready to shoot and scare whatever it was away. Then I noticed it sounds like something on 2 legs, and did I get a surprise when the young female Sasquatch and little guy came out of the woods. And she had a couple rattlesnakes in her hands. Then she blew my mind to pieces when she spoke to me and said, "About time you got up." Then she said, "We went and got something to eat for this morning." And she laid the snakes on the ground, and then they sat down and started to peel skin off them, and she hands little man a piece of snake and then offers me a piece. I took it because I didn't want to offend her by not taking it. So we sat there and ate raw snake. During this, I asked her why all of a sudden did she speak. LOL, that was a mistake because she got started asking me all kinds of questions about humans and our world. I spent at least the next 6 hours telling her about how complicated it was outside these woods. She looked confused about things, and I told her that's how different our ways of living are. Then, right before dark, here comes Kawa and Brick Wall, carrying a basket made of limbs and vines. And then she dumps out a bunch of different types of fish of all sizes. Then she said we brought food for everyone to eat, so I had to eat raw fish this time. Then we sat around the fire talking about different things. I asked her how old she and Brick and the kids were. That's when I learned how they figure time. She said she had seen over 80 cycles in her life, and I found out a cycle was when it gets to be cold or hot weather. So I figured she would be around her mid-40s in our years, and Pretty Girl would be a teenager, and Little Guy was around 10 years old. By this time it was late and I went into my tent to sleep, and they were stretched out on the ground sleeping. Then the next morning, it started out the same way, but they were back at camp a lot earlier that day, and we spent time together until they heard the truck coming up the trail, and they got up and slipped into the woods. I could feel them watching what was going on while we broke camp and loaded the truck to leave. Then I heard Kawa say, "Bye, my friend. Hopefully you will be back soon." And I told her I would be happy to come back and spend time with my new family members again. I told her to tell the others I love them and will miss them, and was happy they accepted me into the clan. What an experience. That is a lot to wrap the mind around. William, you must have a great heart for these forest people to get so close to you and share so much of themselves with you. Again, thank you, William, for sharing these experiences. I know for me it was very educational and just fascinating. I feel you are very blessed to have such experiences. It makes me wonder who else may have had such in-depth experiences. It reminds me in a number of ways of other shares I've heard or read about, such as that with Tuluk by White Song Eagle, the Enoch story written by Autumn Williams, Steve Abney's experiences, Janice Carter's, Connie G's, Kat Hanson's, and the Glog saga with Kevin Lang. The overall sentiment offered by the forest people reminds me of messages shared by Sunbow True Brother, Kelly Rainbow, Jack Lapsaritis, Kathleen Odom, Mike Patterson, Sue Walker, and others. What a fantastic mystery. I hope you enjoyed hearing about these experiences. I know I did. I would love to hear from anyone who sees this, who has had similar kinds of experiences. Thanks for watching. Blessings.